Are you ready to unleash your full potential and become unstoppable in your success and leadership?
Welcome to the Unleashed and Unstoppable podcast, where we provide powerful insights and strategies for coaches, corporate leaders, and entrepreneurs. I'm Lianne Carter.
And I'm Carol Register, and we're certified master neurocoaches who are passionate about helping you overcome your limiting beliefs and optimize your performance.
Each week, we'll be sharing actionable tips and strategies using neuroscience, from interviews with industry experts to solo episodes, to help you lead a life of power, purpose, and possibility on your own terms.
Join our community of like-minded individuals. Hit subscribe now, and let's be unleashed and unstoppable together.
Hey, leader. Welcome back. I am so excited to welcome you today to Cara Chase. She is a business mentor and productivity strategist who loves to help busy women with the hair-pulling frustration of building a business and needing a personal life. And maybe an app for those of you that have young children like myself at home. She shows her clients how to create simple planning systems. Who doesn't love simple? So that you can prioritize ruthlessly and give yourself some space to focus. I know I hear that all the time, right? I just want to be able to focus, all while getting rest and actually having a life. So welcome, Cara. I am excited for you to be here today and really look at, well, we're just talking about this, right? This topic before we went live or recording about what to do when your week never goes as planned. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you about all of this today, because it's something that is relevant really to anyone, but particularly to busy women who are moms. So I would love to get into it.
Well, I mean, we were just talking prior to starting this conversation around how sometimes life can really get derailed, and how do you lead into setting yourself up for success, right? Yeah. To be able to really plan for success when you do feel like everything is a priority, right?
Yeah.
And creating that time and space to rest, to recharge, to do fun things, enjoy life, right?
Yes, that's what it's about. And if you have little kids, you know the importance of trying to be present and trying to give them your attention. I'm very mindful of when I notice my kids looking at me and I've got my eyes on my phone. You know, they notice that. So building in those boundaries and that time and that space is really, really important. In the productivity planning type space, everybody is looking for the magic system, the magic planner, the perfect highlighter that's going to make you more productive and all of these things. And what I've come to realize over my now 8 years working from home as an entrepreneur is that it's a matter of taking bits and pieces of different systems, different boundaries, different planners that work for you, and constantly tweaking and adjusting depending on what's happening during the week, what season of life you're in, what season of the year you're in. We were talking about snow days, right before we started recording. And so what happens is we get this bug of like, I'm going to be more productive and I'm going to plan and I'm going to schedule and I'm going to batch. And we sit down with our pretty new planner and go, okay, I'm going to write a blog from 8 to 9 a.m. on Monday. And then from 9 to 9:15, I'm going to stretch and on and on and on and on. And what I have found is that time blocking doesn't work in the sense that it's taught typically, because either your day doesn't go as planned because a monkey wrench gets thrown into it, a sick kid or a snow day, or maybe there's some sort of client emergency. It doesn't always have to be about kids. Maybe it's a day where you have zero energy left to give, and you need a day to yourself, a mental health day, a regroup day, a rest day, whatever it is. There's an infinite number of reasons. And the concept is this universal law of entropy. People kind of forget that nothing in the entire universe stays the way it is.
Constant moving, right? We're in constant motion, constant movement. Yeah.
And things devolve into chaos, which we know intimately. If you're, the admin person in your household or trying to run a business or whatever it is. So we kind of lose this reality of like, this is a universal truth. Entropy is a universal truth, and things do not go as planned because that is life. Okay, if we accept that and we understand that you can have the best plans in the world, but things will come up. But what happens when we don't have those perfect days? So what I like to do is when a day totally goes sideways or a week or whatever it is, my favorite thing to do is to take a hot minute. Sometimes I'll literally take 5 minutes to just like stare out the window with some tea. Depending on how you process, you might like to journal for a little bit. For me, I tend to be very in my head. So journaling sometimes helps. Sometimes just staring at the window helps, honestly. But the question that I go back to is, what is the most important thing for me to do right now in this moment?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's not always what do I want to be doing? Because if you ask me 9 times out of 10, what I want to be doing is like being on the couch with a book and, my 4th cup of coffee or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be an adult. You have to be a responsible adult. But I got to this point yesterday where I kind of did this brain dump of a to-do list when it was a page and a half of like 8 by 11 paper. What I wanted to be doing was super easy for me to schedule out Instagram posts for the next couple months. Already got the graphic done. I just need to like go in and do the simple captions and schedule it all out. But that's junk food to-dos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I know that Instagram, while it's kind of a necessary evil, it also doesn't really move the needle on my business very much. And so if I have to pick something because day isn't going as planned, whatever it is, what is the most important thing for me to do right now? It might be working on sales copy for my online course. It might be making sure I don't have any dead end URLs on my website. Mm-hmm. That kind of like what really moves the needle in your business, because you can't necessarily plan for this evening or tomorrow. You can try and you can take your best guess, a very educated guess. But when things go totally sideways, the best thing to do is take 5 minutes to give yourself that buffer of like coming out of the overwhelmed, spinny head, feeling completely frantic. Give yourself a little space, and then however you want to get it out of your head, what is the most important thing to do in this moment right now?
I think that's powerful. Yeah. Just like for the listener to give yourself permission to create that space. And there's actually a theme that's come up in quite a few interviews and discussions we've been having lately is around the power in the pause and that space. And I know, right? Been there when you feel like there are so many things that are coming at you and you need to be doing all these things that you feel like you should be doing. But then, as you said, you're just doing the junk food task, right? To feel like you're being productive versus really focusing on that most important task in that moment. And I think that reminder, Cara, is so important, right? About leaning into in that moment, because you know what? The next minute, it could be completely something else, because you could get a phone call from school. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or you could get an email in your inbox. You could find out that something is on fire. I've found myself so many times, like especially leading a team where all their fires on your plate and you've got to help sort that out. And you also need to ensure that you are moving things forward for yourself in your projects and you. So that's a beautiful reminder and invitation to the audience to give yourself permission to take time.
Take time and pick one thing.
One thing.
These are very hard won lessons over here. Like I have been through it all, from 1 kid to 2, pivoting my business, moving states. Like everything is always different. Are you going to buy a new planner because you think that will fix it every time your week doesn't go as planned? You need to have that, like you said, permission and that awareness of what's the next right thing to do.
When I think, you just lead into something there. Because one of my questions that came up was for the listener who's thinking, well, what if everything feels urgent? But you lean into what's the next right thing, right? It's like that next item to then be able to move the next thing. So just leaning into that and supporting the listener, connecting with that, right? Is there anything else on that same note in terms of when they're feeling like, how do I prioritize, or how do I pick what that next thing is?
It really kind of goes back to knowing your business, because there are some people who maybe they have an amazing Instagram game and they know how to be in DMs and close sales and all that kind of stuff. So maybe for their business, being on Instagram is the most important thing because that's what moves the needle on their business. So it's really that awareness of what makes the most difference for you, what's going to make the most impact. Okay. So for me, scheduling out 2 months of Instagram posts is not going to make the most impact. Making sure my sales page copy on my online course is tweaked and updated and improved for testing, that is going to move the needle on my business. So, I write down a list of a page and a half of to-dos as a brain dump, not because none of them are important. Sure, they're all important. They're all things that need to happen. But the reality is you really can only do one thing well at a time. So if you are completely off track, if you are in that spinny head, overwhelmed, frantic, and you feel that pull to just work harder, that is a signal to you to just slow down a sec. And let's really think about what's the next right thing to do. I have found that every time I have felt that pull to, I need to get busier, I need to work harder, the work product is not as good. I get hangry and tired. I do not give my best to myself or my family. It really doesn't actually work. The weight that's lifted from knowing that you'll be more productive and put out better work if you just stop and regroup. Like you said, give yourself permission to have that pause. It's such a better place to be as a business owner.
And when you're in that better place, you can tap into your creativity, right? Your critical thinking. I mean, that's what I often find times too in conversation with clients is that they can't find an answer. They can't find a solution to something. It's because of that pressure, right? So releasing yourself from that pressure actually creates you the space, right? And then to think about that and that reminder of the impact, right? Just so much goodness, because in those moments, just reminding yourself, right? The next best thing, the thing is going to create the biggest impact on what it is for you in that moment, on what you're working on is powerful. So I love all this because out of the practicing my preach, so to speak, right? And I know that you have this map process. Is there anything else in your process that can support the listener in building? I mean, part of it's building that or setting that intention, right? And then just building that into how you are operating, especially if you are using all the things, right? With the planners, right? I got it, all the sticky notes and all of these, trying to implement all of these other productivity systems, right? And trying to master, right? Because it's once I just get this system down, then it's going to, just be a game changer for my productivity.
Right. And we all hope that, right? We all want to learn and improve. So the MAP process is an acronym. MAP stands for mindfulness, action, perseverance. So I came up with this because I had someone come to me and say, this method of planning doesn't work because things don't go as planned. And I realized what I was missing and what I was teaching was how to regroup and have that perseverance with your schedule and your goals and all of those. So I'll go through them pretty quickly. The first step is mindfulness. This is where you understand how you work best, already established knowledge that you have about yourself. So I know I have the most creative, firing on all cylinders brain power from about 8:30 to about 12:30 every day. I know in the afternoon, I tend to be pretty done with the creativity and brain power. That's also because I have little kids that get up very early. So I know that about myself. I know that I have to be done working by 3 p.m. for kid pickups. I know, like, all of these things that you know about yourself, how you work best, your energy level. For example, I know I like having meetings all on a couple days during the week instead of spread out throughout the week, because I like to have front of the house days and back of the house days, right? Some people might like it differently. So mindfulness is an awareness of how you work best in your schedule. The next step is action, which is take your best guess. Okay. You have your week. You have your set in stone, like, boundaries around your schedule, your appointments, what has to happen. Maybe you have your brain dump to-do list. And so you take your best guess as to, I have to write this blog and I think it's going to take me an hour or 2 hours or whatever it is. You take your best guess and you take action on it. The third step, perseverance, is what most entrepreneurs miss. Perseverance is when you don't have things work out the way you planned. What do you do next? It's when it's uncomfortable. It's when it's new. And what it is a feedback loop. So the perseverance is going back to mindfulness and going, you know what? I tried to write a blog in the afternoon and it just didn't work for me. Or, you know what? I didn't drink enough water. And so it really affected my ability to, like, be on and give my best work. All of those things about why did this not work, you take back to mindfulness. And then when you go to take action again, you have additional information to not repeat the same mistakes again. And it's this upward loop of continual feedback that has to become part of your process and your mindset to keep going and not give up and not think that it's the planner's fault, or you just need to use different colored pens, or you know whatever it is, the sticky notes and all the stuff, because you have, if it's not working for you, you have missed one piece of this upward cycle feedback loop. So that's the MAP process: mindfulness, action, perseverance to come back with new data.
I love that.
And it's kind of amazing the way that works.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've got, and I've gotten stuck in this place too, where it's like, I'll just be more productive if I get this really pretty, amazing planner that's all over Instagram, right? No, it's not the planner. It's how you use it and the feedback and mindfulness that you re-input into the next time you take action, the next time you sit down to plan your week or a project or a goal. I know long-term goals, if I don't know how to translate them into daily or weekly actions, what's the point? So I don't actually focus on goals anymore. I didn't set any goals this year. I set goals for following through on my processes and my habits. Totally different mindset, because I've tried all the goal setting, and the perseverance and the feedback loop is, well, this way of thinking about goals doesn't actually work for me. So I'm going to do something different, because my entire experience is up to me, not somebody else. So there you have it.
I just want to reiterate what we just said there, right? My entire experience is up to me, nobody else. And when we're speaking into bold leadership, it's taking a stand for that for yourself, right?
Yes.
And taking time to understand how you work best. And I love the feedback piece, right? Because feedback is information and it's neutral, right? And we take that data, as you said, and you just, it's a feedback where you go up and you go up and you go up. It's a journey. It's a process.
Yeah.
And how many times, right? I'm just thinking, I'm sure for the clients that you work with, like myself, where if it's not working or it's not perfect, that it creates this tension and this guilt and this judgment and the criticism. And the taking today is really about saying it's feedback. And it's information to help you be a stronger leader, help you be a stronger entrepreneur, help you be a stronger mom. And I'm just thinking, like, what you're teaching your kids, right? Like, if you're modeling this for for yourself and your children are watching you, they
Right.
see that too.
Right.
It's powerful.
Exactly. And here's a perfect example of something like that in action. So I personally love the Full Focus Planner by Michael Hyatt. I kind of I have to process it on paper and then I put it into my different digital systems and all that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of half and half. On their daily sheets, they have your top 3 priorities. What are your top 3 priorities for the day? Well, maybe that's great for someone who goes to an office from 9 to 5, right? And what I found after using the planner a couple different quarters is that I would try to fill out these top 3 priorities and I could never get 3 of them done. I literally have approximately 20 hours a week for my business. That's it. So I have to ruthlessly prioritize what's on my plate and what I say yes to and what isn't. And the change, instead of saying, oh, this planner doesn't work, I realized, well, it's because I don't actually have time for 3 big work priorities in the day. That's just me and where I'm at in my season of life right now. So I changed it to 2 work priorities. And then the third one is some sort of personal habit goal, like drinking enough water or going for a walk or planning dinner, whatever it is. And when I made that shift based on my own internal mindfulness, perseverance, taking action, completely changed the way that I was using the planner and the way I felt about myself and how I was going throughout my day.
And that's powerful, right? And it's going back to really, I mean, these tools, they serve a purpose, and I've been there too, getting really frustrated. Like, okay, I want the journal that's going to set me up for success with all of these things. And I'll be honest with you, using the Full Focus Planner, it took me a while to really get into it. Yeah. Because it's really looking at, how do you work best? And what are the priorities, especially if you are for the biggest challenge for myself, I found when I was in my leadership position as a director is managing, right? You've got your priorities, you've got your team's priorities, you've got the division priorities, you've got your personal priorities, but you have a lot of different buckets. And so how do you set yourself up for that, right? Yeah. And speaking into that, I mean, you talked about, you've got the business goals and then you've got your personal goal. Is there anything else that you could speak to or address for those that do feel like I do have multiple buckets? And so how do I ruthlessly prioritize so that, the buckets are full? Because they all do have an importance in my life. Yeah.
So I think this kind of goes back to the whole conversation around work-life balance, which is like so overused and has lost so much meaning in the last few years. But it's kind of that concept of how do you fill all your buckets? So for me, I've got all of those buckets as well. I've got me, myself, and I as a bucket. I've got my husband in my relationship as husband and wife. I've got my kids. And then I've got my business, right? And everything that's involved in that with my team and my clients and everything. I would say when I know I've had a really good day, it's when I've been able to put something in each of those buckets. It's not necessarily about, I'm checking the box of like, I had time with my kids or whatever. I notice how I feel the end of the day when I have plugged my phone in and not looked at it since 6 p.m. and I'm doing puzzles with my kids. Or we send the kids to bed early so that he and I can watch TV and have some time together or, whatever it is. Or I completed a really big priority for my business. And maybe it's the only thing I got done for my business that day, but it was a big priority and I got it done. So I would say there is no perfectly balanced day. We all know that, right? Anybody that tells you that that's what you should shoot for is not living in the real world. It's really about that mindfulness piece and your habits and your actions. For example, I don't know if this was before we were recording or after, but I was talking about how I will notice when I see one of my kids looking at me and my nose has been in my phone. And I immediately am like, they're noticing that they're trying to talk and interact with me and my nose is in my phone. So what do I do about that right now in this moment? What is the choice that I am making presently, consciously, purposefully? When I can be focused on whatever that bucket is, I go to bed like satisfied and feeling good. But I think the whole like filling every single bucket every day, that's hard. If you can put a little in each bucket every day, I think that's a better way to look at it.
Yeah. And, I that's almost a lesson I wish I would have learned so much sooner, because we, as you said earlier, you've got this long to-do list and you're really, and that's what I hear all the time. Well, I wish I could go to bed with a to-do list versus looking at how you, like your ways of being, which is what you've leaned into. Right. And just having those present connected moments, and they don't need to be long, right? It could be like a puzzle, right? 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It could be, even just taking a pause to hug your partner or hug your kids, but having that present connected time.
Yeah.
And intentional time with your buckets. Yeah. Is beautiful.
Yeah. And there are days when it's just a pure family day, right? And there's no work happening. So you have to be realistic about, what you're doing when, and checking off the boxes to check them off and have a work-life balance, just what makes you feel like your buckets are being filled. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's not always not work. I do what I do because I love my work, and it's a creative outlet, and I love helping people. I love teaching people the lessons that I learned 5 years ago, right? Exactly what we're talking about, to try and save them some time and pain and hard lessons.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's amazingly fulfilling for me. Right. So when I feel like I've accomplished those things and been present and been like in the flow, that's the best.
Beautiful. And taking a stand, right, for the listener, for the audience, to create that for yourself. And I'm there's a theme that's come up through what you shared, Cara, and it's about you. Yeah. It's connecting with yourself to look at, right, what works best for you. Mm-hmm. What are your priorities, and what are your buckets are, and what that looks like for you to just put a little bit in those buckets. And I think to also not forget about yourself, right? Like you start off by saying, me, myself, and I, right? Yes, you get to have a bucket there for yourself as well, right? Yeah. And it's really easy to forget that. And so just a little bit, right, in each bucket each day.
Absolutely. It is this concept of, I don't know if it's radical or not, but personal responsibility for your experience and your choices.
Yeah. Especially when you're leading, right? You're a leader, right? Yeah. You're in a position where people are looking up to you, whether it is your family, whether it is your team, whether it's your business.
Right.
Right. And if you're burnt out and you're worse for wear, it's not helpful to anybody, right?
Well, and it's hard to say you're a leader if you're constantly being reactive instead of proactive. You got it. Yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I'm really curious, if there was a single action step you would have for the audience, like the listener, to take today, what would it be?
It would be, gosh, I have to pick one. Let's see.
I know, going back to the one thing, right?
I know. I would say the thing that's always most helpful for me when I feel like I'm getting off track is to do that brain dump, right? I don't live my life by the brain dump list, but it's my go-to when it's like everything's swirly and I'm feeling overwhelmed and all of that, right? So take that 5 minutes, if that's where you're at. However, to calm yourself and kind of pull you out of that space and do that brain dump list, because there's a mental load shift that happens when you do a brain dump that will release some of that tension. And then most of us tend to be more visual. I know there's different people that learn more by audio or doing or whatever it is, but the majority of people have a pretty significant visual learning capability. When you see it in front of you, that's when you can actually be mindful of what's the most important thing to do right now, right? It's hard to do that when it's swirling around in your head and you keep pinging yourself with oh, I forgot about that. No, here's this little junk to do, or here's, whatever. So the one action would be taking a hot minute to give yourself some space and do a brain dump list so you can actually see what is on your list and be able to prioritize purposefully and mindfully.
Oh, I love that. I'm curious to know, looking at your journey, you talked about like looking back 5 years. Is there anything else you want to add or any other lessons that you're like, man, I really wish I knew this sooner?
Yeah. So I do something called an ideal work week, which is a pretty common concept. And again, going back to the very beginning of our conversation where we talked about entropy and how things devolve into chaos throughout our lives, right? I actually redo my ideal work week every single quarter or every single like seasonal change, because my ideal work week in the summer with 2 kids is very different than during the school year. It's different than the holidays. I live where we have all 4 seasons and we have property with like actual gardens where we grow food. So my priorities when we're growing food is very different than when we're inside for the winter. So giving myself permission to like throw what I've been using for the last 2 months away and start over because things are different right now, be okay with that. It's okay. Everything changes over time. Having an older daughter and a younger son, totally different experience between the two. So the tools that I had and the way that I could function with my daughter, totally different than with my son. Totally different. They tell you, but you never really quite know until you're like in it, right? So yeah, what I wish I knew 5 years ago was just be okay with throwing away what you've been using. If don't hold on to something that's no longer working, I guess is the concise way to say it.
Yeah.
Redo your ideal work week, however you like to frame out what you're going to do when. Be okay with redoing it if what you're doing isn't working anymore.
Well, this goes back to, giving yourself permission, right? To connect with what works for you.
Right. Well, and who are you waiting to get permission from? Like, honestly, who are you waiting to get permission from to tell you that you can redo your work schedule if you're a work from home entrepreneur or, whatever it is? If you're still in a traditional office setting with the boss, I get there's some other layers to that. But if you're in charge of your schedule, who are you waiting for permission for? It's all up to you.
So you get to, stand irresistibly in your leadership and be bold and use your voice and take a stand for what works for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think and I was guilty of this. I literally operated from thinking that my day is basically first thing in the morning, like earlier at nighttime, because that my day belonged to my team. My day belonged to everybody else. And I used to say things like, the moment that I walk through those doors, my day belonged to somebody else. Right. So I set that intention instead of voicing what was important to me and setting myself up for success. Right. And so that's why I really love, what you said here today, Cara, because it's leaning into, in any different area of your life, like you are still the leader of your life, right? And being able to advocate for what's important to you so that you are the most productive, right? That you are able to tap into what is, that creative space for yourself, to be able to be empowered to know and choose what the most important thing is and choose to take things that work for you and ditch the things that don't work. Right. Yeah. Like a lot of productivity systems are very much cookie cutter. And I've been in the productivity space for many years. Yeah. And it is going back to, knowing who you are, knowing
and how you work best.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the one other piece that I feel is really important is for the people that have a partner and or family, kids, communicating what you need and what those boundaries are is unbelievably important. And I didn't realize I've never been shy about communicating what I need. My husband and I have been together over 20 years. We're very clear on how the other person works best and what we need to reset and regroup and be a strong couple. But I realized at some point that some people don't naturally do that, or they're not used to asking for help or for what they need. And so if you are somebody that doesn't ask for help or communicate what you need naturally, like it's not second nature to you, make that one of your habit goals. If you want to call it a goal or a process or whatever, to maybe you have, it doesn't have to be a formal meeting, but maybe you check in with your partner on Sunday and be like, hey, what have you got coming up for the week? How do we need to, whatever, instead of constantly reacting to miscommunications and then that ends up to nobody getting what they need. Right. So if you have a partner and or family, kids, being able to communicate what you need and what those boundaries are is really important.
Well, I think that's an amazing invitation to finish on. Yes. And you're right. I mean, it is communication. I noticed that on the weekends, I think very guilty where I'm like, okay, I have this intention for the weekend and how I vision it. And my husband has a completely different plan. I'm like, okay, first thing Saturday morning, it's like, okay, let's touch base, right? So how do you envision this weekend going? How do I envision this weekend going, right? So that you're on the same page and you can support each other and you create that space, especially when you have young children, to be able to just have that time for yourselves, right? And so I love how we've finished on that, right? Because that communication piece, because it's great that you can do all of this, but you
don't live in a bubble.
Yeah, exactly, right? You want to communicate with those around you. So, I love it. I love it. So thank you, Cara. So I know you have a lovely gift for the audience, for the listener today. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that before we finish up here?
So I am giving a copy of the Distraction-Free Living ebook. And it goes back to this concept of being present with whatever buckets you want to put a little in every day. And we all know how incredibly distracted we are in today's age with all the devices and all the things happening. And I mean, just the concept of like how you can be sitting next to a person on the couch watching Netflix, both on your phones, scrolling Instagram, that like all of that. Holy cow, what are we doing to ourselves? So I go through a ton of tools, techniques, methods that you can use, whether it's your desktop computer, your email, your phone, to really start eliminating as many distractions as possible so that not only are you being more present with whatever you're doing, but it's actually going to help you get more done in less time with your work. It will help you eliminate that context switching that happens when you're watching a training and answering emails at the same time and Instagram's pinging on your phone. Like, how much quality, good brain juice work are you actually using when you're doing that? It is a pretty chock full of tips and tools and strategies to help you become more distraction free. And I've got a bunch of printables in there too that you can use to help you work through these processes.
Oh, awesome. That's an amazing gift. And as you said, because there is so much distraction out there, and being present and connected is something that we have to be consciously aware of, right? And when there's so many things coming at us, like, what a beautiful gift for this audience. So thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Enjoy it.
Well, thank you for being here today. I'm so appreciative of the knowledge, the insight. I mean, there's so many juicy takeaways from what you shared here today. And just going back to, right, connecting with yourself, giving yourself permission, being able to create that space and just allow those moments, right?
Yeah. Well, and you talk about bold leadership. This is bold responsibility for your experience.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff. I love any chance I get to like help me help you, right? With all these things that I've learned over the years. So I hope everybody enjoys it. And it was really fun to chat.
What is the best way for the listener to connect with you as well if they want to learn more from you?
Yeah. So you can go to carachase.com/newsletter and I'll let you spell it for them. So it's CARACHACE, wherever you type that out. And I put out a free weekly newsletter that is 3 tips to work better and 3 tips to live well every single week. Because my whole purpose is I want to do the best work I can in the least amount of time so that I can get back to doing the things that I love in life. So every week I send out tips to help you with both of those.
Love it. And that's what we want. That's what we stand for, right? That's what we're standing for, right? We have, one life to live. Let's live it to the fullest and also be able to give back and be the leader and make the difference and the impact that we're here to make while we also get to enjoy life, right? So that is exciting. It's beautiful. And yes, we'll have all the links to get your gift, connect with you, available for the audience. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks everybody for listening in, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Unleashed Unstoppable podcast with your hosts, Alexandra Carter and Cara Register.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review, and subscribe.
That's all for this episode, Wildly Ambitious Leaders. See you next week.